The Morgan Report with David Morgan.
David Morgan of themorganreport.com for the week ending 16 September 2022. Well, today I'm going to start off on our Twitter feed, which is at silverguru22 on Twitter. And that's probably where we are the most active. And I'm not going to go through every one of these, but these are the most recent post I did was today. The dollar is doomed. This is something I've talked about that you'll never hear from a financial type, at least not mainstream. A penny compounded at 2% a year since the time Christ was born is now worth 218 trillion. The dollar is doomed. In other words, compound interest can only go for so long before it becomes absurd. And that's why biblically I think there was a reset every 50 years. Moving on, something that I've dwelled on is the extra pyramid. This one is from Trace Mayer. That's a better version. I have the original, and I'm going to post it on Twitter one of these days. It's much simplified because when John came up with this idea, we didn't have nearly the amount of derivatives that we have now. And the commodity sector was pretty straightforward. In fact, I'm pretty certain that when he did his original, there wasn't even options on futures, just straight futures. But that's from my best of my memory. A couple other ones. Wall Street Silver posts with me occasionally. A couple nice looking stacks, as you can see. This is one that I will not say a lot about, but you know what you know when you know it. This one from Houston is very good. This shows the Dow in gold terms. And this is something that the late, great Jim Dines wrote about called the invisible crash. And when the Dow Jones Industrial Average was factored as relative to gold, you would see that it was actually decreasing, not increasing. So he called it an invisible crash because only in a constant money sense was it, in a fiat sense, it was increasing. This is one that I did with, that I don't do often as far as the interviewer. And it was really a lot of fun. Dale I really hit it out of the park as far as I'm concerned. He's a very technical trader, and we went through some stuff that I usually don't get asked on most of the interviews that I do. And one of the things I pointed out was my early days in trading for a living, how I was taught that the white leads the yellow. And we talked about that for some level, but what we pointed out, or I pointed out to him and everyone, because it's recorded, was there's a chance, it's not yet guaranteed, that we may have hit the bottom in silver. And the reason I say that is if silver is leading gold this time, and I believe it is, that means it bottoms before gold does. Remember, silver topped the last day or first day of May 2011, and gold peaked in September. So silver actually led, if you're thinking of who peaked first, silver did. And it was several months later that gold did. So whether you believe silver leads or gold leads, really, they take turns. But at major turning points, when silver gets stubborn, that's a pretty good indication that we've hit a bottom. So it remains to be determined. And I think that's all I want to say. Well, I'll say a couple more things on my Twitter feed. The evil twins of technocracy and transhumanism. My friend Patrick Wood has written several books on technocracy. As far as I'm concerned, one of the leading authorities on it. Been in this movement for a long time, not just technocracy, but I'll call it the truth movement, for lack of any other terms. And I will be interviewing him in October to get an update on our mastermind series. We'll put him on the mastermind dais, so to speak, and go through what he sees from the technocratic takeover of the globe as it unravels. The last one here is from Steve San Angelo, pointing out that the shorts hold about almost 100%, not quite, of all the total SLV ETF shares in the securities lending market. A high short interest utilization rate is over 10%. Something big is about to happen in the market, he laughs, and he gives his URL. You can see it here in this graph. You can expand it, take a better look. And you can see the shorts holding that amount. Crazy. Rafi Farber, who you can look up, if you don't know already, any silver nut probably knows of Rafi by now, did a pretty good analysis of what he thinks is going on between the short interest in the SLV and the long interest by the banks in the commitment of traders. I decided to do the rest of this week's weekly perspective on this report. This comes from preciousMetalsCommoditiesManagement.com. Matt Watson, who I've mentioned in the past, very good analyst, very great guy too. And I was introduced to him by the Silver Institute, Mike Lorenzo. And as I said earlier in the last update, that Mike Lorenzo was at the Silver Symposium and gave a great lecture, by the way. So this is a PDF. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. You can find it on the website I just mentioned. But silver, the cultural pride of India. What's interesting is showing the demand trends in India. And, of course, in ounces of silver, thousands of ounces of silver. 5 demand forces: semiconductors, wireless development, automotive electronics, auto and trucking electrification, and, of course, solar. I'm talking about suggestions on electronics, lithium batteries, and solar photovoltaics. By the way, there will be a semiconductor silver demand on the 29th of this month, which is just a couple weeks away. Electronic markets classification is everything, showing you the difference between the automotive electronics, semiconductors, and consumer electronics, showing that the semiconductor silver demand continues to increase. And I've mentioned that in the past. Many people are unaware of how much silver is actually used in the semiconductor industry, and it's pretty clear what the trend is doing. Semiconductor precious metals spends, how much money is going into it. Semiconductor demand, we just really looked at. Wet chemistries, we'll skip that. Solar and brazing, we'll just mention. Silver and semiconductors growing, again, you can see that. Automotive silver demand. You know, some people say it's significant, some say it's not. It's in between in my studied view, but certainly the trend is there. And of course, some of this is into the future, and I really doubt that everyone's going to be driving an electric vehicle in 2030 for a lot of reasons. Some I've mentioned on my Twitter feed, and others I've done brief studies on and announced in podcasts and that type of thing. Main areas of spending in the auto sector, you can go through that pretty quickly. Solar demand. You can see that solar is actually now, according to the Silver Institute, almost 10% of the total silver demand side on industrial. So over 50% of the silver market is industrial demand. It's 55, according to the last report by the Silver Institute. And solar makes up a great deal of that percentage, like 10% of that. So that's it. I will leave you there this week. We'll keep it short and sweet. I'm doing this one day late. And this is David Morgan of themorganreport.com. I'll be back with you next week with another weekly perspective.